Hey everybody, and welcome to Dominion Cards, the video series where we take a strategic, in-depth look at various cards in the board game Dominion. Today we're looking at Bank. This is a 7-cost treasure card from Prosperity, and it says, +1 coin per treasure you have in play, counting this. So, Bank solely generates coins. That's all it does. However, unlike your more classic, base treasure card, it's not a fixed amount. The output scales with the number of treasures that you have in play, including itself. So treasures are played one at a time in your buy phase, and you get to pick the order. So ideally, you will play Bank second last out of all of the treasure cards that are in Dominion. The only one that you would play after Bank is Fortune from Empires, because that doubles the amount of money that you have, so you would rather get the money from Banks first. Now, Bank can potentially generate huge amounts of coins for you, but it's going to need a lot of help in order to get there. Now, because the only thing Bank does is generate you lots of money, and at this point you all know what money is used for, we're just going to be talking more strategically about Bank in general, how you maximize this money, when you would use it, and so on. But before that, just to clarify something here, when you play Bank, it is at the very moment that you play it is when it does the calculation for how many treasures that you have in play and how much coins it's going to give you. So essentially, when you have multiple banks in your hand, each time you play a bank, it's only going to count the banks that you played before that one. So just as a demonstrative example, say we have a hand which has 3 silvers and 2 banks in it. If we want to get the most money out of this, what we're going to do is we're going to play the 3 silvers first. It gives us 6 money. And then we're going to play the first bank. And at this point, we have 4 treasures in play, 3 silvers and 1 bank. So that bank gives us 4 coins. Then we play our second bank. And at this point, we now have 5 treasures in play. And so that gives us 5 coins. And that would total up to 15. So, banks usually coming last, except in the case of Fortune. So realistically, how are we going to generate lots of coins from Bank? Well, what we need to have lots of treasure cards in play, which usually means they're going to come from our hand. And that means that we're going to need good amounts of card draw. So the vast majority of treasure cards in the game are stop cards. That means they don't draw other cards. And so if you need a lot of treasure cards into your hand, you're going to need some very, very good draw, right? You need a lot of draw cards normally to get through a lot of stop cards. So every village smithy combo gives you room for 2 stop cards. So if you want a lot of stop cards, you're going to need a lot of pairs of those, and so on. This is actually quite a big challenge for Bank that it needs to overcome. Drawing lots and lots of stop cards is usually pretty hard. It's a big challenge for the game. It's sort of where some of the fun comes from, is getting control of your deck and how to deal with it. So, yeah, Bank sort of needs good engines pretty much most of the time. Now, because Bank solely generates coins, it sort of directly competes with gold, right? There's no other fancy effects on Bank, it's just giving you money. And of course, there's always the base treasures in every game, and all they do is give you money as well, right? They're also treasures. Now, gold's a little bit cheaper than Bank, and it's always going to generate you 3 coins. Bank, on the other hand, if you want it to be worth its higher price tag, then you're going to need to draw it alongside at least 3 other treasure cards in order for it to start generating at least 4 coins and therefore actually be better than a gold. Now, in addition to that, Bank is a prosperity card. That means that its presence means it's more likely there's going to be a platinum card in the kingdom, because under the normal standard randomization rules, it's the number of prosperity cards, or specifically the first one drawn from the randomizer in real-life games, that determines whether you have Platinum and Colony in there. And of course, Platinum is another base card that generates even more coins, so Bank's directly contesting with these cards. Now, even though we are sort of directly comparing them, in some circumstances you might actually want banks over golds, and it can be better than that, even though it's doing the same. Like sometimes banks never going to generate more money than gold, or realistically, or you don't really care if it does or not, but you might still want the bank anyway. So some examples of this are usually going to be attacks, like particularly trashing attacks that might target gold but not bank. So knights, for example, only target cards that cost between 3 and 6, and bank costs 7, so it's actually immune to being knight attacked. And then cards like Noble Brigand specifically say they only want to trash silvers and golds, and so bank is immune to that as well. And that can be a reason why, even if you're not generating huge amounts of coins, you still want the bank anyway. It's just safer to have it. But this is fairly niche, but, there have been cases where I've done that. Otherwise, if it's not generating more than gold, maybe you don't really care that much. The other big challenge that bank has is why do we even want to generate huge amounts of coins? Well, sometimes it's not actually any use for us because you need extra plus buy available in order to make use of it. Bank, unfortunately, doesn't come with plus buy. It needs to get it from somewhere else, and if the kingdom just doesn't have any plus buy, then the reality is you might just not ever be buying bank because, over-generating coins has no value if you can't spend them, right? So bank, as you can see, really needs quite a lot of extra support from other cards in the game to cover all of these problems that it's missing. Now, there are some draw cards out there that draw you cards and give you plus buy at the same time, and these are great for bank because all the two main problems that it has, these solve both of them at the same time. So I've only got 2 examples here. Obviously, there are more cards that do this, but these are like the 2 classic and most obvious examples. Wharf and Council Room, both of these draw you a lot of cards. They both effectively give you 4 cards and like at least 1 plus buy, and they also tend to involve games that are very reliable and everyone's drawing big hands all the time, either because Council Room is, everyone's helping each other out. Wharf being some of its draws duration draw just means you start off with really good hands, so it's all nice and reliable. Now, if you have really strong draw that's available, then generally there's less urgency or need to trash as many coppers as you normally would. A more standard approach would be that if you can get rid of the coppers, you sort of try to, at least some extent, to help you get deck control, and then you may end up just re-adding a bunch of treasures anyway, which could be stuff like golds or silvers. Rarely that you're adding coppers back in. Once you've now got the stock card space and engine in order to support that many stock cards. Of course, you start with 7 treasures in every game, and those treasures that's a lot of treasures that you might be able to play, and that really helps out bank. So when you can get into this situation, then you have to buy a bank on a turn at one point, but then you can focus all of your other gains on getting engine components and improving reliability, rather than having to spend all of these gains on re-adding all of these treasures back into your deck. So that's really good for bank. This is sort of the main thing that it does. You just gain 1 card and just slam a load of money into your deck, all at once, and you can start the game with all of the treasure card support that bank needs in these circumstances. But, problems with these sorts of decks, as I'm sure you will well know if you've ever had the games where you can't trash, is that when you've got a lot of these stock cards, particularly all of your starting coppers, is that the decks are usually pretty inconsistent, right? So, and the problem is that if your deck draw is inconsistent, you might not actually be generating as many treasure cards. And, not only is there the reliability of, or the randomness, of whether or not you draw your bank in the first place, bank itself will actually be worth varying amounts based on how many other treasures that you drew. So bank sometimes, even when you draw your bank, you don't actually necessarily get that much money out of it, or at least not as much as you were hoping for, if you can't reliably draw your deck. In addition to that, if it does give you a lot of money, you also need to make sure you draw plus buy as well. So Bank sort of asks you to set up these decks that run into consistency problems by having a lot of stop cards, and then they sort of exacerbate, in a way, the consistency problems by it itself, like not being guaranteed output. And sometimes just like gold's actually more valuable than, I guess, keeping the coppers around and trying to add a bank, just because it's a lot more consistent, and it means that you'll hit like 8 more reliably instead of sometimes only hitting 4 and sometimes going all the way up to 15. You didn't care that much, like just the big swinginess of Bank not really helping, given that the decks are usually inconsistent anyway. There's a couple of cards out there that have some particularly strong interactions with Bank that I just wanted to call out. So number 1, Crown. This is really nice because it's a throne room that's also a treasure, which of course is going to boost Bank by the time you get to your buy phase. You've got all these treasure cards in play, but also it can double treasure cards as well. And that's particularly nice because Bank, when it's doubled, is probably your single largest, like if you want to maximize the money that you're getting, it's probably Bank that's generating the most, so it's the one you want to hit. And you can get huge amounts of money with Crown Bank. This isn't solving the other problems like draw and plus buy, of course. But yeah, this is very good. I will note that some other treasure doublers like Specialist, not so good as Crown, because Specialist is a lot harder to play in your buy phase, whereas Crown you can always play in your buy phase. You don't want to be playing Bank as your first treasure, which is why Specialist doesn't really work out and Crown does. Another great example is Storyteller. This allows you to play treasures early and convert the coins that they give you into draw, and they all stay in play. So what you can do is you can have a lot of coppers, silvers, golds, and just turn them all into draw cards, and then once you've drawn everything, you play a Bank in your buy phase, and you're getting like 12 money out of it or something, like absolutely huge. So Storyteller Bank is exceptional. Again, it's not giving you plus buy, but, it lets Bank just generate massive stacks of cash. Gamble is another one, which is a little bit weird. Basically, Gamble allows you to play these decks where any card at all, it doesn't even have to be treasure cards, that can give you like at least 2 coins on output. Effectively, you just churn through your deck. What you're really looking to do is hit treasure cards that are worth more than this. And yeah, the ordering's a bit random, but Bank's very good because Bank is, of course, a massive source of coin, which is great for these sorts of gamble decks. But at the same time, gamble decks can just like churn through silvers, right? It just sort of effectively skips past them as though they were a cantrip. And that means that when you do hit the Bank, even though it's a little bit random, it can get you a lot of money because you just threw like tons of silvers into your deck. So that's one to watch out for. I guess it's a little bit rarer, but it's weird. It is interesting. And last of all, Capitalism, of course, like the ultimate combo card, can turn a load of actions into treasure cards. And in this case, you can have a lot of treasure cards around that are not stop cards. So you can play like Stewards in your buy phase and draw 2 cards with it. And then not only is it easier to get more treasures into your hand, but also you got all these like Stewards and other cards in play that are now treasures. And so Bank just gets like astronomical value again. So there may be more examples, but these are the ones that stick out in my mind as just like very good for Bank. So in summary for Bank, this is a bottom 25% card. The problem is it just needs a lot of support in order to really be viable. You need draw in order for it to just be better than gold, and you're going to need plus buy in order for the actual amount of money that it can get you to actually be useful. It can generate you a lot of coins in instances where engines like do not trash many coppers, and that can be valuable there. It costs 7, and I'm not really going to go over reasons why some card just costing 7 on its own might be useful. I did cover them in the expand video, and if you want to know more, check that out. But it's things like upgrade. like 7-cost cards and all that. But then we're not really talking about the functionality of bank specifically. And then there's all the usual general treasure things like, gives you points with keep, right? I'm not going to go over this sort of thing anymore. I'd rather just focus on bank and what it does instead for these videos. Yeah, so the reason why bank's bottom 25% card is just all of the support that it really needs. Like, there's a lot of games where bank is around and you basically don't touch it, unfortunately. I mean, that's just what bank is. Very expensive, can potentially be very good, needs a lot of work. Sometimes what it's giving you isn't even what you need anyway. So, yeah, well, that's all I really have to say about bank. So what we're going to do now is going to head over to the online client, and we are going to generate some kingdoms with bank forced. Now, sadly, I was hoping I would get this expansion done before Seaside 2nd Edition came out, and it just did. And so I've turned off Seaside for this video's random kingdom analysis, and probably will for the rest of Prosperity. There's only 2 more videos after this, and that's just because I'm going to need some time to understand the new cards, and I'm just worried that if they come up in random kingdom analysis, I'm basically just going to be focusing a lot on those new cards and trying to understand them, and I think that's just going to distract from the actual card that I'm meant to be focusing on. So let's be without Seaside this time. So what have we got here? No colonies or platinum, but there is potions. What have we got? Is there any trashing at all? There is replace only, and we've got a witch and familiar as junking attacks. That's pretty bad. There's even militia for hand size attacks, so this is super duper engine-y. We've got a village, but it's only university, but it can gain laboratory and witch as draw, which is fine. There's counting house, but there's not really any way that we're going to end up with a load of coppers in the discard normally, so it doesn't feel like it's very good. And there is artisan for even more 5-cost gaining, but I think university is probably fine. So can we use bank here? Well, we can certainly get an engine going that tries to curse our opponent. That feels very good. I sort of do like that, but I do wonder how much, is university a trap? Is it better to give all the curses to your opponent and then just do a big money with harem support? In that case, you're probably not going for bank. There's the classic witch and militia combo for a money deck. Just slap your opponent with these attacks all the time and inconsistently, and just sort of big money it the rest of the way. There is even replace, where you might be able to occasionally turn a gold or a harem into a province or whatever, but I don't know if the big money player cares more about that. Can the engine player with university draw a lot? And if they draw a lot, what are they going to be drawing? Well, replacing coppers doesn't feel very good. It takes 2 hits, and the only thing you really get to turn it into is silver or militia. So I think replacing is kind of bad. Oh, the thing I just noticed, there's no plus buy here at all, is there? So you're going to be having coppers no matter what, and you don't need the money from bank, and I'm not even going to bother reassessing the rest of this, because the bank's pretty useless here with no plus buy. And inability to really sort of get rid of coppers. You buy 1 harem, and if you are going to go for a deck drawing, but the draw's not good enough. So I think it's just harem, witch, militia, money really, which very sad board. But yeah, I think bank is completely useless here. Never going to touch it. So come on, here we go. Let's go for kingdom number 2. No colony platinum again. What have we got? I'm not going to sigh anymore every time I see possession, don't worry. So we got transmute, it's very bad. We have... But is it the only trashing? No. So there's upgrade and there's apprentice. Okay, actually there's very good trashing on this board. What does that mean for us? So there's quarry, which is a treasure that does things. I mean, okay, that's a nice start for bank. We might have this anyway. Is there plus buy? Yeah, there's council room, and council room is a great great draw card for bank, actually. So this is nice. We got mining village, we got council room, we have got an engine here that can build big, and we got plus buy, and we got quarry, so we can actually get a whole load of engine pieces very easily, even without bank. Now, why would we have bank? Well, it gives us a lot of money to spend a lot of buys on. The other thing that we can do, of course, is we can be playing a load of possessions, and that seems like that's really going to be good. The ultimate payload here is actually to not have money yourself. I guess you can have... so here's what you can do. Right, you can play multiple possessions per turn. You can make them quite cheap with Quarry, and then you can have a deck, like you trash down all your coppers with Upgrade, and you sort of have this deck where, yeah, you've got an upgrade in your deck. Maybe eventually you buy an apprentice just to like nix the upgrade, and you know your opponent's going to be drawing really well anyway. So why do you care about them apprenticing stuff so much? Actually, yeah, you want to get rid of. Oh no, you don't. Sorry, I was going to say there was an upgrade to possession, to bank, to province, like chain, but there's actually not. So what you want to be doing here is basically playing multiple possessions per turn, and if you go the Quarry route to buy a lot of engine components, your opponent can't score on you when they possess you because they can't afford province. Right, that's the key. You have a way to actually get a lot of cards but not score when someone's playing with your deck. So what you're hoping to do is possess your opponent and buy points with them, and you have multiple turns with them instead, right? And so they can't do the same to you, and that's how you win. So it's basically a possession stalemate, is this game, where players knock out their money in their deck until they're basically just playing multiple possessions per turn, and you can sort of build that engine without giving your opponent any opportunity to buy points with your deck, right? So bank is actively bad here because of possession, and if you buy it, you let your opponent like multi-province a lot, I guess. So we won't be buying bank here. Smithy as well, and laboratory, but draw's already very good on that kingdom. It was the plus buy. So what have we got? Hey, we've got Platinum Colony in this game. Lots of games of potion, but of course, we haven't got Seaside, so more chance of it showing up. Let's see, so there are other treasures in the kingdom, but they're Philosopher's Stone, and then we got Quarry again. Now there is Bandit. Bandit's very good at trashing other treasures, so stuff like Bank is going to be at risk because of Bandit. Bandit's gaining you a lot of golds, and it's potentially trashing your banks. That's bad for you. So maybe you just coast on the golds instead if you go that route. But let's see, we've also got Workers' Village, which is very good plus buy. That's good for bank. There's Platinum as well, isn't there? Of course, let's not forget. And we got King's Court. So what can we do with King's Court? We can King's Court Conspirator. It's a lot of money, right? But remember, this is a colony game, and can we do better? Well, one problem I just noticed is that there's no trashing. We got Vineyard and Gardens. So this is very weird. King's Court is our only draw, basically. But there's all coppers, and I'm not actually sure King's Court's even going to work here. Like, how do we consistently find King's Court in a deck that's rammed with coppers? But if that's the case, then there's no draw. And because there's no draw, that means that, bank is of no use. Now, with no trashing, and there's gardens, there's Workers' Village for lots of plus buy, and there's Workshop. So the question is this Workshop Gardens? Because there's really not much else to do, and you're not really worried about bandit attacks. Bandit big money doesn't sound great, but that's really the only other thing that you would be doing here. The only other consideration is Philosopher's Stone money. And ironically, we've got colonies to build up to. We've got a deck with no trashing, but we're not really getting junked either. We've got like Workshop Gardens. Would you ever Workshop Gardens and then shift into Philosopher's Stone? You'd never draw it. No, that can't be right. Like to hit colony, surely not. Right? You never draw it. We've got Workshop with a village, and specifically like Workers' Village. So Workshop Gardens is good, and I think you just estate pile out too fast, right? Like, maybe the fact that there's colonies on this kingdom are no good. Like, I don't really see anything that's helping you, like, get up to colony. You see, because there's quarry and workers' village, if there was draw, there would be good opportunity for vineyard. You just buy a lot of cheap, like, workers' villages, conspirators, king's courts, but I don't think it's going to work. So I think it's just Workshop Gardens. I think that's all this kingdom is. Bank is no good again. I'm just going to leave it there at that. We'd already assessed that bank is no good, there's no draw, because king's court's non-viable, because there's no trashing. Right, so this is kingdom number 4. No platinum colony here. We do have another special treasure with contraband. This is another kingdom with absolutely no trashing. There is a junking attack with torturer. Is there a village? There is throne room, and it can be played on Harbinger and Grand Market. Well, Grand Market sounds pretty nice, yeah? How can we get Grand Market? So there's Workshop, that gets us Harbingers and Thrones. So, okay, that's sort of like a very roundabout way of gaining villages with Workshop. That's fine. The lack of trashing is kind of nasty, but I'd really like to be throning torturers. Junking my opponent seems very nice here. There is Workshop Gardens again, and there is Throne Room with it, which is... I don't think it's as good as Village, but, it's still Workshop Gardens. Question is, can we do better? Like, can we... So I don't know if we're really getting Grand Markets thinking about it. I guess you can, like, open Baron Silver and sort of hope that all works out, but it probably won't. How good is the engine? I think the engine is good enough to beat Workshop Gardens, right? Like, I guess the Workshop Gardens player would just take curses with Torturer and hope that they pile out on the curse pile as well, but they don't really get any points. Contraband seems basically terrible here, I guess. What would they do? I guess they'd block Grand Market. Like, if someone bought that, wouldn't you? That's the only reason you'd buy contraband here. Bandits, whatever. Like, probably not playing with it. I just don't know when I would use bank here. I mean, it's true that you could try and get a throne room torturer engine off using Harbinger, which can help you a little bit with reliability, but like, it just feels too slow in a way. And would you still use bank in that case? What you really want is Grand Markets. I guess having a bank, if you do manage to draw deck once, like maybe you have one Baron, and you use that to try and like help you bootstrap towards, I guess, one bank that you use to help you try and get towards Grand Market. I don't know, it all just seems too slow. And then you build up the Grand Market and then the pile's empty, right? Like, you can't really get... Oh, man. I don't know, but I feel like bank is just no good again. Like, even though you're drawing coppers, like, the engine's not really good enough. Let's be real here. This is not the sort of engine where I'm looking to keep all my coppers around and be any good. So I wonder if... I was thinking for a second there, Harbinger Workshop Gardens, that doesn't work at all. What am I thinking? Workshop Gardens Throne Room, like, instead of Estates? Like, is that better? It might be. Maybe that's the key instead. Possibly. I just don't know how good that is. I don't think it's any better than just straight Workshop Gardens, to be honest. These are such terrible kingdoms. I do honestly wonder. I'd normally never think Workshop Gardens, it's real bad, but these are real tough kingdoms to build, honestly, the engines here. I do really like slapping my opponent with torture a lot, but I just think it's too hard to justify building, but maybe I'm wrong on that. Maybe the engine is the clear winner and Grand Market's quite good, but Grand Market seems very hard to buy, and if you're not buying Grand Market, what are you even doing, right? Like, the output is quite bad. Otherwise, there is bank... Maybe you can draw well enough with Torturer and Bank to just single province enough that Workshop Gardens can't make it. Right, like maybe they just can't do it. They just don't get enough points. But I just don't know. It just feels too inconsistent. I don't like that. But But like that player also gets to workshop and get a bunch of harbingers and throne rooms. But the problem is that they need a lot of them, and then any gardens player is like seriously going to pile out very easily. Right, that's the 3 pile for a workshop gardens player. It's gardens, workshop, and either harbinger or throne room, because the engine player needs them in order for their engine to work. So I think that's the key. They just need too many of them to make the engine work, and then they just get the game pulled out from under them. So I can't believe I've sort of gone for like workshop gardens twice in one of these random kingdom analysis videos. Like Bank is just really struggling here. Well, this is why Bank, I'd expect it to struggle normally anyway, to be honest. Right, here comes the last one. So we have trashing with Bishop, Apprentice, and Replace. That seems okay to me. There's no village. There is Grand Market again. There's Familiar as a junking attack, which is maybe fine. You really hate curses here, so I think Familiar's alright. What would that mean? I really don't like opening Familiar, though, because I'd have to go Silver Potion, which sounds like I really don't want to be doing that. But otherwise, what is this? Is this single torture, like money? It is possible to get up to Grand Market. I mean, there are ways. You can do a Grand Market Bishop thing, I guess, and you just play that and you're not playing any attacks. But like your terminal of choice is either Bishop, Torture, or Replace, and you got to like pick one and make use out of it. How good is Replace? Well, it junks a little bit as well, but I don't think it gets to do that much because Familiar is going to be better and worth doing. I think if I can throw a load of junk at my opponent, curses, and then I can like slowly Bishop away. But I guess the only problem with the Bishop plan here... Oh no, sorry, there's Grand Market with plus buy. So you can get stuff to trash, and you can Apprentice to draw non-terminally. So I think that's what it is. I think this is a very slow Bishop engine, right? But you've got the time to Bishop. And really, I don't want any treasures long-term. I just want, like, Grand Markets. Maybe I need some. I'm not sure how good of a value proposition Bank is in that case. I can see situations where I do get Bank, even if you're only, like, trashing it to an Apprentice. But maybe Gold is just more consistent in that case. Like, it sort of really depends on how many treasures I have. Like, I'm probably not keeping the potion around, right? Like, it gets trashed, so like even that doesn't help. And Venture's very bad as well. Sorry, this was not Colony Platinum, was it? No, it wasn't. I think I might skip Bank here as well. I just don't know whether I'm actually using it. If I go the engine route, which I think is better, it's all down to how many Grand Markets I get, I guess, and then I'm buying the price points I need to be able to Bishop, which I can only Bishop one card anyway. So otherwise, I will just have like a few golds, really, I suppose, to help me beef up to the price point that I need. So yeah, I think it's just a slow Bishop thing, really. And I don't think there's any room for Bank. So we didn't go for Bank once in any of those kingdoms. And well, that's kind of the Bank experience. I think until you get to the later expansions, like I found that like Bank just wasn't very good within Prosperity. Like Prosperity just doesn't give you the engines that you need. And well, that's sort of being reflected here, really. Like, we're just struggling to get things that we need to come together. Like, there's good plus buy and there's good draw on this kingdom, but like there's other things to do that aren't treasures, basically. So you just don't want the stop cards is the problem here. So like you can't Bank. So yeah, like Bank has real challenges, I think, to use, and while it can be very flashy, like it's too impractical is sort of the problems that it has here. Anyway, I hope this was useful for you. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.